All right, so this is exploring the anxious attachment style. So I'm really excited to share this information with you guys. Learning about attachment theory was a huge game changer for me as far as personal growth and finding, peace and happiness in a life that's just not so frustrating in this area of relationships. I spent a lifetime struggling with heartache and finding myself attracted to people who inevitably made me feel like I was difficult to love. And I kind of grew up feeling that way anyway, even before I started dating. So it made sense that I would pick these people. And I always would spend so much energy trying to change them into other people that would be able to love me in the way that I felt like I needed to be. And of course, that doesn't work because you can't change other people. And I don't do that anymore. And a big part of it is because I discovered attachment theory. So my goal is to help you figure this part out as well, and to identify the role that you play in your own heartache. So we're going to get started. Tonight is pretty much academics. I'm going to review attachment theory and all of the attachment styles because we have to have this working knowledge of this before we can dive deep into the anxious attachment style, which is what we're all here for. So tonight we're not doing any discussion, really, no breakout sessions. This is all kind of like the classwork tonight. And next week is when it becomes more interactive and we'll be doing breakouts and things like that. So I hope that you are all able to take the attachment style quiz. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely helpful, and you can go back and take it after the class if you haven't had a chance to do that yet. It's also kind of neat to take it after you've been doing some of this work on yourself in a couple of months or next year. Take it again and see how you answer things a little bit differently. I can tell you from when I first found out about this concept, I was 100% anxious almost on every single question. And now only a couple, and it's only once in a while. So I've definitely changed who I am for the better. So we'll just quickly review the syllabus. Week 1, that's tonight, is our introduction. So we're going to review the basics of attachment theory, as I said earlier, and gain a basic working knowledge of the 4 attachment styles before we dive in deep next week into the anxious one. Week 2, this is where we really explore the ins and outs of this painful pattern, from how it's created to how it manifests in our adult relationships, and basically learning where it comes from. Week 3, this one, the anxious avoidant relationship. This is the section where most of us will recognize our relationships. These 2 pairings are the most common within the category of dysfunctional relationships. It's this pairing. You can expect a lot of aha moments when we go into this week. And week 4 is healing the anxious attachment style. And this is when we'll take our new awareness and learn the steps that we need to take to shift our relationship behaviors towards those that are more secure. And I promise you, it is possible. So like I said, we have a lot of groundwork to cover tonight to prepare us for the next 3 weeks. So after tonight, you will have a good working knowledge of what is attachment theory, how our attachment styles develop in childhood, secure attachment versus insecure attachment, and the 4 attachment styles: secure, anxious, fearful avoidant, and dismissive avoidant. So what are attachment styles? I'm just going to read a little bit. If you've ever wondered why some people struggle with these repetitive patterns of painful and failed relationships, well, for others, healthy relationships seem to just come so easily. Many of us will think that who we have butterflies with or who we don't have butterflies with is out of our control. It might be surprising to learn that how we feel and behave when we attach to others is a direct after effect of our childhood experiences with our parents or caregivers. So it's these childhood experiences which create our attachment styles, our mannerisms of interacting with and attaching ourselves to others. Many people will spend a lifetime thinking that there's something wrong with them or that love is painful or unattainable, all the while believing that it's out of their control. And this is partially true. Toxic relationship patterns are out of our control, but only for as long as we remain oblivious to the existence of attachment styles and the roles that we play in our own heartbreak. So how do individual differences in attachment styles develop? Well, it's during our first year of life that we form our initial attachment style. As infants, we depend on our parents to regulate our emotions by responding to our cries and cues. As we get a bit older, we continue to rely on our parents to provide us with the security and confidence, which allows us to explore the world, knowing that we have a safe place to return to when we stumble across perceived danger or feel overwhelmed. Having the security of a stable relationship at home is what lets children interact with the world without excessive anxiety. And that's a key phrase. Without this healthy sense of emotional security, children are forced to develop coping skills on their own. And the relationship with our parents is what teaches us how to bond with others. That makes sense. So how our caregivers responded to our emotional needs directly affects our sense of self-worth as we become adults. Our primary relationships set the stage for what feels safe to us, and it defines how we feel and act with others throughout our lives. We may think how we feel in regard to intimacy is human nature, but in reality, it's likely our parents who influenced our ability to have fulfilling and satisfying relationships. Knowing our adult attachment style can give us a better understanding of our actions and behaviors and thought processes as we engage with others, and it's the first step in becoming more secure in ourselves. This knowledge is also helpful in understanding why our romantic partners behave in the way they do. Life becomes so painful when we take other people's attachment behavior personally, and more so when we shame ourselves for our own. It may sound like we're throwing our parents under the bus for ruining our love lives, but this is not the intent. Our parents' attachment styles were formed in their own childhood experiences, just like ours. Generations of families have been teaching their own children how to break their own hearts for years without ever realizing that this is what they're doing. There's no malintent involved in this. So this conversation is, it's for us, it's for our parents, it's for our children. And it's just, once we heal ourselves, we can begin to help others do the same. And that's why we're doing this tonight. So what is attachment theory? This is the academic part here. So the concept of attachment theory was first created in 1950 by Mr. John Bowlby. And through his research, he determined that it was normal rather than pathological to need other people throughout the lifespan. He argued that both infants and parents are biologically predisposed to form attachments, and that babies are born equipped with behaviors such as crying, cooing, babbling, smiling, clinging, sucking, and following, just to name a few that help ensure that adults will love them, stay with them, and meet their needs. He confirmed that we are born as emotional beings designed for connection. In the early 90s, Bartholomew and Horowitz proposed a new 4-category model of adult attachment. Each category falls under the broader heading of either secure or insecure attachment. While Bowlby's research focused on the behavior of infants after separation from their parents, Bartholomew and Horowitz, among others, have determined that our attachment style continues to have a significant impact on our adult relationships. They confirmed that a lifetime of conditioning is what determines our behavior in relationships. And due to this continuing understanding and constant development of this theory, the different attachment styles have changed in name over the years. And even to this day, some people will use one name while others will use another. So when you're researching this on your own, it can get really confusing. So for this class, we're going to refer to them as secure, anxious, which you'll often see as preoccupied. Fearful avoidant, excuse me, also referred to as disorganized, and the dismissive avoidant. And if you remember from the previous slide, these are divvied up into two categories of secure and insecure. And so anyone that doesn't have the name secure on it falls under the insecure category. So this is the updated model of attachment theory. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this now, but you do have it in your PowerPoint, and it'll make a lot more sense after this class. So once we're done, if you want to go back and review this, and as we begin to learn more and more, you're going to see how the four corners here, secure, fearful, preoccupied, and dismissing, kind of blend in the traits with the one next to it. So it's important for us, even though we're here for the anxious attachment style, to know about all of these styles if we want to enact change in our own lives. As we learned from Bowlby, our sense of security within the context of relationships begins when we're babies. So it's important to understand that a lifetime of conditioning just isn't recognizable until someone points it out to you. And only then can we begin to understand and then start the lengthy process of rewiring the faulty programming that we normalized our entire lives. And as you learn more about each style, the graphic will make more sense in regards to anxiety levels and self-worth, which is just like the key phrases to keep in the back of your mind, that all of this is pretty much fear and anxiety related. And it's a good time to start thinking about the attachment styles of your partners, not necessarily right now, but just keep in mind all the running partners that you've had in your entire life. You want to pay attention to the theme, okay, or the patterns in your lifetime, not focusing on the specifics of each one, but just notice and become aware of the theme. And if you think back to that quiz that you guys took before this, I think all of you took it, start to question, how might your previous partners answer those questions? And just doing it with that perspective and from that lens can really almost immediately change how you remember that relationship. And we'll talk about that in another class, that, as we begin to grow and learn, we're gonna maybe remember things differently and think, oh, that didn't happen how I always thought it happened. And that is a good sign, because that means that you're now challenging that narrative and understanding that something else can be going on when we think it's one thing and it's really something else. So, understanding our romantic partners and why we choose these partners, that's even more important, is why are we choosing these ones that we now understand is an important piece in changing this pattern. So we're going to start with the secure attachment style. And, this is what our goal is, to get to this point here. So we're going to talk about what relationship security looks like and where it comes from. In a perfect world, each child would be raised by caregivers who freely and consistently provide them with praise, love, support, safety, and affection. By having their needs consistently met, that's the key phrase in this one, these children would then grow up with a healthy and secure sense of self. They would not fear relationships nor the loss of relationships, and they would attract other people with the same sense of security in themselves. Living without the fear of abandonment or rejection, they would simply be comfortable with who they are within a relationship or not. This is the secure attachment style. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Does it sound too good to be true? It's said that roughly 1/2 of people do get to enjoy this type of connection. Those with secure attachment styles grow up just knowing their worth, knowing that they're lovable, and they don't feel the need to seek validation from others. Tension with a mate does not result in them feeling overly reactive, and expressing emotions is not shame-inducing. They believe their partner will be responsive to their needs and accept them as they are. Secure attachers approach their unions with confidence and trust, generally having an optimistic view of their relationships, having the ability to be upfront about their wants and needs. They have minimal anxiety about intimate bonds. And while no relationship is perfect, those who demonstrate this secure attachment pattern tend to find love to be satisfying. So this graphic lists some of the top secure mindsets, certainly not all of them. They're comfortable with intimacy. They know that being hurt is painful, but I know I'll get over it, so I don't need to run away. I can fully enjoy intimacy and expect to receive it freely from my partners. You can almost use these mindsets as affirmations. This is a good slide to cut out and tape to your bathroom mirror. So the first thing you do in the morning is pick one of these and read it out loud. And eventually what we put out there becomes the truth, right? No need to play games. Being close is what a relationship is all about. This is what I want. And if my partner doesn't want closeness, then I need someone else. Treats partners well. My partner is one of the closest people to me. I can count on them and they can count on me. Of course I treat them well. Sounds so simple. Give and take. Relationships are about mutual support. I'm comfortable giving in my relationship, and I expect the same from my partner. If they can't do that, then I need someone else. Takes responsibility. Relationships are built by two individuals. Therefore, there's a typo. At the very least, I control half of it and take responsibility for how my partner feels. And emotional intelligence. I know that sometimes behind my partner's criticism, there's fear, worry, or anxiety. I don't take it personally, but try to help them express it. These sound so simple and obvious, don't they? But they are very difficult to actually believe and do within the context of an intimate relationship. I think about all the times that I did the exact opposite of all of this, and sometimes still do, and have to kind of remind myself and notice it. The good thing about this work, that even though it never truly ends, you get a lot better at identifying when you slip back into a pattern and making that repair. And there's no such thing as a perfect relationship. So as long as you can recognize when you're in that old habit and make that repair necessary, then things should work out. So let's dive in a bit deeper for a minute by returning to John Bowlby's theory of attachment. His theory suggests that children are born by being programmed to connect with others. This is what helps them to survive. Along with this thought process, he believed that the fear of strangers represented a significant mechanism of survival. He also discussed short-term separation and how it caused progressive stages of anxiety in the child. He believed attachment behaviors were instinctive and were activated in times when the proximity between the infant and mother were not reached, whether that was physical separation or insecurity and fear. For this discussion, we are going to use the word mother for the most part, though as long as the child has a bond with a primary caregiver, it doesn't really matter who it is. So what does a healthy child caregiver bond look like? This occurs when the mother does not have extended periods of absence from the child, and when the mother consistently responds to the child's emotional needs, consistently. Making eye contact, responding to the cries, coos, and smiles, providing a safe place for the child to return as they begin to explore the world. In return, the child knows that they can trust the mother, because it has learned that the mother's response is both consistent and sensitive to their needs. Their environment is warm and nurturing, and they learn that they will be supported and loved. They believe that people can be trusted. So let's explore this in a little bit more detail here. This is something that was written by the Attachment Project, which I recommend as a resource for all of you. So these are the 5 conditions necessary for raising a child with secure attachment. That the child feels safe, not raised by an overprotective, but protective enough. They know that they are lovable. The child feels seen and known. Attuned parents accurately read their children's cues and respond appropriately. These attuned responses teach the child that when they signal a need, they can expect a prompt, predictable, and accurate response. And you can kind of see how this transitions into our adult lives, right? Because this is how the child wants to feel with their mother. This is how we want to feel with our partners, right? That we have a safe place to return to, that our partners are going to be attuned into our emotions, and that we're going to get reassurance from them. The child feels comfort, soothing, and reassurance. The child feels valued, and the child feels supported to explore. Again, sounds like such simple ways and obvious ways to raise a child, but not everybody gets this 100%. So, look at these headings. Do you recognize any of these conditions as either occurring or missing from your childhood? You don't have to answer out loud to me, but just think about it in your head. Was any of this missing? While Bowlby's theory focused on the first years of a child's life, our attachment style continues to be shaped throughout all of our formative years. While none of us can remember whether or not our mother responded to our cries as an infant, we can recall how our parents responded to our needs as we continued to grow into adolescence. So now that we fully understand the importance of a healthy infant-mother bond, let's return to what secure attachment looks like in adults. Do you think you can identify a secure attacher? This list contains 10 of the most common attributes of the securely attached. As you read each one, try to think of why the behavior is considered secure. Keep this list in mind as we unpack the insecure attachment styles in just a bit. And I suggest returning to this slide frequently after this class and as we go through the next classes, because these are the signs. These are the green flags. This is what we're going to be looking for. Just give you a minute to look that over. Kathy, do we have any questions or anything we want to go over?
We actually do have a question.
Okay.
Can children raised in daycare while parents work develop a secure attachment style?
Yes. Can they develop a secure one?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I did an article actually on this for Nanny Magazine because some people have their kids with nannies like 80 hours a week. And so it was really the nanny that was the primary caregiver. If the kid is in daycare for 40 hours a week, but then comes home to the parents and you're in a daycare that you trust, then absolutely it shouldn't be a problem at all. I sent my kids to daycare and then they are pretty securely attached kids. So yes. That being said, if your child does spend more time with other people than you, then the other people become that primary caregiver, and that's something that you really have to pay attention to. Anything else, Kathy?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, thanks. All right, guys. So how cute is this? When an insecure attachment style is activated, we ignore red flags for the sake of love. I've had this sent to me a couple of times over the years, this exact picture. So at least that's what we think it is, love. But what it really is anxiety and fear, as you'll learn about shortly. It can take some time to figure out someone else's attachment style. Insecure attachers don't often present that way in the beginning of relationships. As we progress through this course, you'll most likely find that most of your partners tend to have similar attachment styles. Hopefully, you'll begin to notice behaviors that you might have normalized or ignored in your previous partners. So then there's this little list of insecure attachment kind of red flags from your partners. not necessarily all avoidant. It's, signs from the anxious attachment styles are red flags as well. So in case anybody's in this class by mistake, they'll still benefit because maybe you dated somebody with an anxious attachment style, like me. So here's the questions to get the wheels turning in your head. Is your partner incapable of accepting kind gestures from you? Do they gag when you try to call them a cute nickname? Perhaps they get worried when you don't text them back for half a day and have convinced themselves that you're done with the relationship. That's an anxious one, in case you didn't know. In other cases, they may just not have a clear idea of what a loving relationship is supposed to be like. All of these behaviors point to insecure attachment relationships. So when we're able to recognize a pattern of unhealthy and emotionally challenging behaviors in ourselves and our mates, exploring insecure attachment styles is a crucial part of changing that pattern. Evaluating our choice in partners is key because their insecure attachment behavior reinforces ours. When we have an insecure attachment style, our choice in a mate often ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing the faulty inner narrative which tells us that we're difficult to love or that love is not safe. Sad. So now that we have a pretty good understanding of the secure attachment style, let's begin the discussion on insecure attachment. Insecure attachment styles form when the mother or primary caregiver does not respond in a nurturing, consistent way to the child's emotional needs. And what else can contribute to this? Well, whether incurred in childhood or as an adult, trauma can change attachment styles. Many traumas affect one's view of the world and those who live in it. This is particularly true in the context of domestic abuse. Experiencing abuse from a source of love is shame-inducing and confusing. A secure person may become avoidant as the trust they once felt with others has been broken, or they might become codependent as they falsely believe that putting their needs aside will make them lovable again. The after effect of trauma influences not only the behavior of its victim, but also all of those within their circle. This can change how the victim feels when they're viewed by those they love, or change how they express love to those with whom they're intimate. But the silver lining to the effects of trauma on attachment styles is that it proves we can change our relationship behavior. It's changeable. This means it is possible with help, time, and patience to change an insecure attachment style to one that is secure. If we can be taught that love hurts, then we can also be taught that it does not. And as we begin to unpack each of the insecure attachment styles, I would like for you to keep in mind that this is not always a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You may very well check off every box immediately on that test and know exactly what style you are, but you might also have difficulty pinpointing it, and that's okay. We're all unique individuals with unique experiences, and so just try not to feel discouraged if you can't 100% identify it just yet. We've got a lot more in-depth education coming up, and you might find you behave differently depending on who it is that you're with and which attachment style they have. So the fearful avoidant. Those with this attachment style might have been raised by parents who ignored their attempts to be intimate or withheld praise and affection. They may have experienced abuse or neglect. The caregivers that they loved were a source of pain. The child's caregiver, the person that they desired closeness with above all others, is a source of alarm. And so as we're talking about these childhood experiences, you can equate the way that a child wants to connect with their mother with the way we want to connect with our partners. That's how it's transferred. It's almost too simple when we look at it that way. So therefore, as children, they internalize the belief that they could not depend on that relationship and this belief was transferred to all other relationships. As children, they struggled to understand how to get their needs met. It didn't make any sense to them. Adapting to their parents' chaotic and unpredictable behavior proved impossible. Despite craving an intimate bond, their coping skill for dealing with unmet needs was to act as if they didn't have any needs at all. By avoiding intimacy, they felt they could not be hurt by the love they so desperately wanted. However, because they still craved intimacy, they became confused about how to act. And from there was born the push-pull dynamic, which defines this attachment style. So here's a few examples of the parental behavior that can lead to this type of attachment style. And the parents might behave erratically or explosively. They might exhibit contrasting and unpredictable behaviors towards their child. The parent's own childhood was likely chaotic and maybe abusive. They might be overwhelmed with the idea of parenting just due to a lack of confidence and self-esteem or education or who knows why. They could definitely be physically abusive or very neglectful, food, clothing, and safety, or display extreme criticism of the child, and that one's super common. And the Attachment Project developed this cool visual here to help us understand the unhealthy attachment cycle in childhood, which is at its simplest form. If you start on the top left, they have their need. And then they become angry because that need's not being met. And then it's still not met after they exhibit those behaviors, right? And they're still having that pain. And then that trust is broken. But then they still have the need. And so it just goes around and around, spiraling like that until they become adults and end up dating us, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about the fearful avoidant just for a minute. This is the one that's sometimes referred to as the disorganized attachment, more and more so as of late. So they can be found in chaotic relationships. They're afraid to be alone, but they're also afraid of connection. And it's difficult for them to trust others or trust themselves. Balancing the need for love with the fear of intimacy proves nearly impossible. It sounds torturous to me. So the fearful avoidant feels unsettled when both partnered and alone, often appearing pessimistic with inconsistent codependency behavior. This constant conflict causes them to feel jealousy while simultaneously feeling uncertainty about their own feelings towards their partner. It's just all massive chaos and confusion in their hearts and brains. And they fear invalidation. The requirement of expressing vulnerability within the context of a romantic relationship totally triggers their attachment response. These people have very high levels of anxiety, sometimes to the point of panic attacks. And though they might feel desperate for affection to the point of obsession, they usually end up feeling trapped in the situation, which to them will likely result in abandonment or pain. They alternate from one extreme to the other, offering affection and then pushing their partner away, hoping to avoid those neglected feelings which they're just so accustomed to. This push-pull lifestyle evolves into chaos as there's no successful attempts at drawing healthy boundaries on either side. Their partners, which is most likely the people in this class, end up confused and frustrated. Filled with self-doubt, they enter and exit relationships quickly, holding within them the certainty of knowing that no relationship will last. It's a sad cycle of the fearful avoidant stepping outside of their comfort zone and then sabotaging the love before it can be taken away. Until they learn about their attachment style, they will unfortunately be correct. Relationships just will not last. Surprising to some, the fearful avoidant shares some behaviors with the anxiously attached, which we'll dive into deeper next week. It makes sense as both styles are fear-based. Like the anxious attacher, fearfully avoidant attachers monitor their partners vigilantly. But instead of looking for signs of abandonment, they look for flaws, which will give them an excuse to pull away. The need for space is a commonality with the dismissive avoidant style, which we're going to learn about next. Sadly, the fearful avoidant combines opposing elements from the other two insecure attachment styles, which is just a huge recipe for pain. The fearful avoidance behavior is often interpreted by others as non-committal, secretive, disinterested, or even mean. However, they tend to have difficulty actually ending the relationships themselves. They pull away just enough to create space and stress. And this typically causes the dissolution of the relationship. And when that happens, it perpetuates the inner narrative that others cannot be trusted to love them. So hopefully learning about these attachment styles that we don't have helps us to look at those relationships a little bit differently and not take them so personally, right? How are we doing, Kathy?
We have one comment and one question. So
Okay.
Kate said, aha, mind blown.
I don't know which part that was on, but the whole thing blew my mind when I discovered the fearful avoidant. I said, oh, that's every boyfriend I've ever had in my life.
And the question is, do fearful avoidant folks make a good fit for the anxious avoidant folks?
So we have a whole week on this in 2 weeks. They make a good fit in the fact that we attract each other. Right? So it's a good fit because of that self-fulfilling prophecy that we live out over and over and over again in our adult lives. Is it a healthy fit? Hell no. Hell no. But yeah, it feels like it fits, and that's why we find ourselves in that trap. That is literally what it's called, the anxious avoidant trap. And that is week 3 of this class. And it's like, wow, talk about the mind blown moments. You're going to be like, holy crap, she just wrote this whole class about me. You know, some of this stuff really is for the people who can identify it clearly. It really is black and white. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is pretty obvious and easy and holy crap. So yeah, that's a good one. They're good fit depending on how you look at it. All right, adult manifestations of the fearful avoidant. Tell me if you recognize any of these in your former partners. They often have a low self-image or self-esteem, though not always. They crave emotional intimacy, but feel mistrust and hold negative view of others. They display that conflicting avoidant and anxious behavior, the push-pull, push-pull. I want connection. I don't want connection. I want to be with you. I'm smothered. They'll actively seek out relationships and then withdraw once their partner desires greater intimacy. Oh my gosh, if that's not the one thing that made me feel so unlovable in my relationships, as soon as I would fall hard for these guys, they'd take a step back. Almost every time. And I would be sitting there shell-shocked, wondering what the hell was wrong with me, that this is what always happens. It was me. So they feel anxiety, often to the point of suffocation, when they begin to fall in love or depend on someone. You know, so you're not crazy for thinking that these people are falling for you, because they are falling for you. They just can't fall for you. So it's really hard on both sides. They'll prematurely pull away when they feel overwhelmed or rejected. They don't feel worthy of the love and affection that they're craving. And they feel like others aren't worthy of love and trust because they just know they're going to betray them. And when they pull away, they do, right? Relationships are chaotic and they might prefer casual sex over something more intimate. So that's why you might feel like at times that you're just a booty call for these guys, because that's a way for them to keep that space so that they don't feel like they're suffocating and having a panic attack if they keep it very casual. It sucks to be on the receiving end of that. And now we're going to move on to the dismissive avoidant. So like the fearful avoidant, those with dismissive avoidant attachment styles, they recognize that vulnerability is dangerous. However, there is no push-pull dynamic with these seemingly cold and distant non-attachers. Wary of commitment, they pride themselves on independence. If they do find themselves in a relationship, it's usually kept at surface level only. The dismissive avoidant was likely raised by emotionally unavailable parents who either rejected the child, who sought emotional support, or who simply did not allow the showing of emotions in the house. So the child learned that people could not be relied on and that emotions are shame-inducing. And due to this conditioning, they simply stopped seeking or expecting anything from anyone. So they stopped craving it. That's the difference between the fearful and the dismissive, is they don't feel that craving. And so they don't crave that intimacy like the fearful avoidant does. They don't need relationships anymore. So they don't crave that intimacy. There's no inner conflict. They're simply not interested. And they develop into fiercely independent people as they get older. As an adult, the dismissive avoidant becomes extremely self-sufficient. They have a positive view of themselves. So this is different from the fearful avoidant. And they frequently keep busy with whatever keeps intimacy away. They become, work addicts. They have a lot of projects and hobbies, and they do a lot of socializing with friends who are always kept at arm's length. So the friendships do not even become intimate. Not wanting to be tied down, the relationship comes last on the list of priorities and never makes it past the casual stage. Rarely exhibiting vulnerability, public displays of affection are non-existent. Often these non-attachers will choose someone unavailable to partner up with to guarantee that emotional space. So by getting involved with someone who's married or geographically distant or satisfying their sexual needs with one-night stands or even prostitutes, they ensure the intimacy boundary. And in times of relationship stress, the dismissive avoidant simply walks away. Like the anxiously attached, the dismissive avoidant vigilantly monitors their partner's behavior, though they're looking for any clues of being controlled. There's no push-pull dynamic with the dismissive avoidant, as emotional intimacy is naturally off the table. So the fearful avoidant is looking for flaws so that they can have an excuse to create space. The anxious avoidant is looking for signs of abandonment so that they can cling on. And the dismissive avoidant is looking for signs of being controlled so they can walk away.
Excuse me, Jamie,
Yes.
someone has requested you to re-show slide 19.
Oh, sure. There you go. So as far as they know, they don't need deep relationships. So there's no chaos happening inside of them. And it's a sad reality is that they just don't know how to be in one. They don't know what it is that they're missing. How are we doing on this slide? Good for whoever asked.
You can move on.
So these are the traits of the adult dismissive avoidant. They intellectualize emotions, because if you make logic out of emotions, you don't have to feel them. They value their independence and struggle to ask for help. They use distancing strategies when they feel smothered in relationships. They don't trust others. They have a very high self-esteem and a very rigid view of relationships. They tend to devalue others because then, they won't have any needs. They don't need anybody. They avoid physical closeness. They train themselves to not care about other people's feelings. They use facts and logic over emotions during arguments. So you won't really even see them become emotionally reactive in a fight. They're reluctant to say, I love you. And they're easily able to shut down their emotions during fights or when their partner threatens to leave them to pretend they don't care. Do they care? I don't really know. This one is a tough one to figure out. And they're probably the least likely person to seek to change their behavior because they're oblivious to the fact that there's anything that needs to be changed. So this is the one that I spend the least amount of time on because I'm not really sure how you can't change unless you want to change. So it's a tough one. With the people that actually crave intimacy, that's their motivation to change. These people don't really have any motivation. All right, look at the title of this one, guys. We made it. So now that we have a basic understanding of secure attachment and the two avoidant attachment styles, we're ready to introduce what we're all here for, the anxious attachment style. Known for falling in love fast, hard, and easily, those with anxious attachment styles find their unions to be a struggle, often resulting in heartache and self-doubt. This style is a result of having childhood needs inconsistently met by their caregivers. They may have been responded to with excessive love and attention at times, and other times not responded to at all. On occasion, it can also be caused by their parents' own emotional hunger, such as when the parent seeks to have their own emotional needs satisfied by the child as boundaries and roles become blurred. But tonight we're going to focus on the first part, which is the unmet needs of the child. So never knowing when their needs would be met, these children lived in constant fear of emotional abandonment. They learned to associate love with the feeling of anxiety. And as adults, they continue to have a significant need for validation, affirmation, and reassurance. Typically impulsive and highly emotional, they require high levels of contact and intimacy within relationships, and typically holding a negative view overall of themselves. They view most others in a positive light. Therefore, codependency is common. For them, there's no better show of value than to be needed by someone else. Just one more red flag one for us. As they rely on others to regulate their emotions, the anxiously attached will pressure themselves to have relationships regardless of compatibility. Red flags are ignored as attention or being made to feel special is all that is needed to trigger their attachment response. Once they feel those butterflies and sparks, they're instantly in love. But little do they realize that the exciting feeling of chemistry likely isn't chemistry at all, but anxiety. Vigilantly monitoring their partner becomes an art form as they continuously look for subtle changes in behavior, which to them are clues of impending abandonment. These small changes in their partners often get blown out of proportion as their attachment response is triggered. So if you're ever wondering, like, I don't know why I get so crazy, or I don't know why I this, now you're going to learn that it's just your attachment response is being triggered. It's like a biological action that's happening, and we're going to work to change that response. It's kind of part of the amygdala with the fight or flight, and those are things that can be changed. Emotions hijack the anxious attacher, manifesting as clingy, jealous, or obsessive behavior. They might resort to manipulation, such as trying to provoke jealousy or not answering texts, or constantly initiating communication and acting jealous themselves, all to get their partner to express commitment in the way they want them to. This behavior feels primal and uncontrollable and can be shame-inducing for the anxiously attached. The constant need for assurance of love can often be what causes their partner to do the one thing they fear the most, and that's leave. Wanting intimate relationships so badly, their overwhelming efforts end up perpetuating that lifelong cycle of fear of abandonment, as the obsessive nature of relationships with these individuals causes their mates to feel smothered and pressured. It's a stressful pattern of heartbreak. And this graphic with the text, if that's not me with my constant texting people, trying to get them to validate me. And if I did not get a text, oh my gosh, did I think that something was wrong with me, with the relationship, or whatever. I took it personally. And this last graphic here, I just stumbled across, and it's not really a lesson, but it's such a great, tiny, simple animation of the differences in attachment styles, and it's in the group chat. So the anxious attachment style says, hey everyone, so I noticed we haven't talked in a while, just making sure I haven't done anything to upset anybody. Right? Isn't that the little codependent anxiety? Let me change everything and think the worst. And the secure person says, hey, we just talked yesterday. Of course you haven't done anything wrong. And so they reassure them. The dismissive avoidant says, what's this? A needy message? Must be a Monday. They could care less. And the fearful avoidant leaves the chat. Like, so perfect. So I'm timing this perfectly. We started a few minutes late. So your homework, if you choose to do so, you do not turn it in. So it doesn't matter, but this is for your benefit. I want you to reflect back on the relationships in your life, both romantic, platonic, and even family, particularly your parents. Are there any similarities in their behavior towards you that matches up with the attachment styles we discussed tonight? Which behaviors in your romantic partners have been similar throughout your lifetime? Can you determine which attachment style your parents or caregivers might have had? And explain how you know. So all of this should be written down in a journal or in a notebook. And are you more clear on your own attachment style? Explain how you know. And the reason I'm having you do, these sound kind of simple, because right now I'm sure you're identifying all of the answers to these. But when you actually take the time to write it down and get it out of your head and in front of you so that your visual brain can process this, you're going to start to begin that self-awareness piece that we need, right? And getting things out of your head allows us to organize them better and process them. And so the biggest piece of changing this pattern is the self-awareness piece. So I want you to write it all down, explain how you know, because you need to become experts at observing behavior, okay? Your own and others. And that's going to be your challenge. So let me just stop the share.
You have a question, Jamie.
Okay.
Carolyn asked, can you give an example of intellectualizing emotions?
Of intellectualizing emotions. I don't have an example off the top of my head, so let me come up with one. So if you're in the middle of an argument with somebody and they tell you that they're feeling a certain way, right? You can intellectualize that and explain it away like, oh, it's almost a gaslighting when you do it to someone else. You're not really feeling that way, or you're only doing that because of this, and you come up with logic. And if you're feeling something, like say the person who is the dismissive avoidant is feeling sad, they'll try to come up with a way to talk themselves out of that. So I'm struggling to come up with an actual example, but it's like, oh, I'm not sad about that. I'm only acting this way because I didn't sleep last night. Or, I'm not grieving I'm just not feeling good, or I'm just, you know, yeah, my mom, whatever it is that they're grieving, they'll come up with some sort of excuse as to why they're feeling that way and then shut it down. I hope that that answers it. It's not really an example, but I think that maybe I'll find one and pop it into the Facebook group.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a lot to take in,
It's a
Jamie.
lot. And so the rest of the weeks are not this much information. So we kind of had to grind through this class in order for you guys to have a baseline. So I did write something else down that I actually didn't. Yeah, so the goal for this homework assignment is to start our class next week with at least an idea of where you learn to behave the way you do in relationships. That's like the best question I've ever learned to ask is, where did you learn this?
Right.
Because it does not happen naturally.
Mhm.
Okay. So when you wonder where did he learn how to do that? Where did she learn that? Who taught you how to do that? Start asking yourself that, because you did get taught this somewhere along the route.
Absolutely.
As soon as we're born, we have those natural instincts of the cooing and whatever. We're designed for connection. But as soon as we're born, we're programmed, right? By whoever's raising us, they just start plugging all of this stuff into our brain. And, you know, it just depends on where we're born and who we're born to. So I just want you to come in with an idea. You don't have to have it pinpoint of where you learn to behave the way you do in relationships, as well as what type of person you're drawn to. Okay, because there is that type. The self-awareness piece is so important to have when you want to make these changes in your life, because you cannot change something that you don't know about. You just can't. You have to understand the complexity of where it became, what it looks like, so that you can begin to undo it. You cannot undo it and make the change without having this knowledge. So write it all down, include your thoughts that might pop up, right? Do a little journaling with it, because all of that is important. You can revisit the attachment style quiz after taking this class and see if you might answer it a little bit differently, or you might just look at the questions a little more in depth. And so next week, we're gonna dive deep into the anxious attachment style. And this is where we'll do, you know, I don't know if we'll actually do breakout sessions with the small group. We might just do discussion. I'm not sure. We'll play it by ear. If you guys have any questions about any of this between now and next week, shoot me a message. I'm happy to answer. You know, you can reach me at any time. All right, guys, thanks for coming.
Thank you.